Hello, my fellow omnivores. My name is Wendy. My co-host Edmar. We're really excited about today's broadcast. We're going to talk about destruction. We will be looking at the Blast extension that's available right now on Omniverse, and we've got a great crew of people with us today. So I'm going to introduce Paul. Paul is our master of disaster. He is our documentation guru. He is a 3D generalist, technical artist, and game developer. He's been at NVIDIA for a couple of years now, helping users everywhere master the Omniverse. So, Paul, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hey guys, I'm a 3D generalist. I've been doing tutorial videos for quite a long time. I've been a tech artist. I've done indie games mostly, a handful of titles. Then I got picked up by Autodesk, worked on Stingray. From there, I worked at Epic and helped with learning content and videos and all sorts of stuff. Um, and now I'm with NVIDIA, and I'm working with the Omniverse team, getting our documentation all squared up and looking good. So that's me
Awesome. I also
in a
want
nutshell.
to. You do a lot here. I wouldn't be able to do what I do without your help. So I love you so much. We also
Aw.
have Eric with us today. Eric has had experience working at Volition on the Geomod 2.0 destruction engine for the Red Faction series. Eric, how did you get started here at NVIDIA?
So after games, I took a random detour, and NVIDIA found me in a cornfield in Illinois writing web-based farm software and asked if I wanted to come blow stuff up. And so I went running out of the cornfield and came over here, and I've been adding Blast support to Omniverse so that we can add destruction to all the various applications that Omniverse is being built for.
That's awesome. I love it. So next I want to introduce Brian. Brian has been working on game physics and 3D graphics for forever, for over 2 decades. He Some of his credentials include the rocket science games, Math Engine, and AGEA. He started at NVIDIA in 2008 and has done a lot of work destroying things ever since. So, Brian, you've had a long career blowing stuff up. Can you tell us how you got to where you are today?
Well, I think you summed it up. I've been doing 3D graphics, started in games way back in the last millennium with Rocket Science Games and some other game companies. And I love math and physics. So whenever I get a chance to do some math, some computational geometry, I'm thrilled. So when I got a chance to work at Math Engine, company, a UK company making a physics engine, I hopped right on board, and from there it went to AGEA that was doing that actually had a hardware physics card that went in PCs, first ever for consumers and consumers, and then NVIDIA bought AGEA back in 2008, and I've been here ever since.
I'm so happy you're here. We've had a lot of fun
Me
playing
too.
with Blast over the years.
Great.
um,
Me too.
so, Paul, I'm going to hand it over to you. First, can you tell us a little bit about the Blast extension and what we are hoping to accomplish with it?
Absolutely. So Omniverse is kind of a simulation engine, and it's built to do simulation, including many other things. And Blast kind of fits into that puzzle by giving it an extension, which allows us to do fracturing, authoring of those fractures, and then you can simulate those fractures as they would act in the real world. I wouldn't say it's a as Brian I think said once, I wouldn't build a building based on the destruction in it, but the visual effect is extremely realistic, and you can author it to really get the kinds of breaking and shattering or explosions that you would really want to have. And I mean, those uses are everywhere, from advertising to movie production to everywhere, right? So yeah, I wouldn't say it's a true physics simulation in the traditional sense of the term, but it does use physics and it does simulate, and it looks very believable, especially if you spend a little time authoring it nice.
Do you want to give us a little demonstration?
No, nope.
No, we're done.
Nope. Nope.
Thank you.
Come
That's
on,
it,
Paul.
guys.
We're done here.
You promised.
And I feel bad because like I'm just the guy that uses this stuff. So the two guys, Brian and Eric, they make this stuff. So like,
Yeah.
I'm just showing off their toys. So yeah, let's begin by starting with a very simple show.
It wouldn't be what it is without you, Paul. I mean, you
Oh,
you go
come
in
on.
there and you tell us needs this.
Yeah, I guess so. So we're going to start with something super simple. We're going to start with a cube. So this demonstration is just going to show you how quickly and easily you can break stuff in Omniverse. Okay, so this is Create. The base application I'm using is Create, and Blast comes pre-installed in Create. But if for some reason it's not installed, you can go into the extensions, and this will kind of prove that it's just an extension. And here we have the extensions panel, and it's showing us as a featured extension because this is kind of a private build. But if we were to just do, I don't know, Blast, you would see that you would find all the necessary extensions, and you just click it, enable it, and you can tell it to auto load if you're running a version that doesn't happen to run it. So like Machinima can load this up, you can load it up and everything. Anyway, so we have an app. The app is Create, and the extension is Blast, and you need to have them both up and running, and then you can start breaking stuff. So here I've got a cube, and with Blast comes this really nifty panel. And this panel is basically how you control all of Blast. And it looks a little intimidating at first. There's a lot of options. The vast majority of them, you won't really need to use all that much. Some of them are extremely useful, and you'll learn their position, and you'll use them all the time. The ones in between will just work around. So okay. So let's fracture this thing. So first, all I've done is I put a cube in a blank scene. I'm now going to hit this button called Fracture. Before I do so, I'm going to set the Voronoi sites. That's how many fractures do I want in my object. Pretty straightforward. So I'm going to set this to something a little reasonable, like 16. This random seed allows me to get a different fracture over and over and over again if I want to get like just the right one. And then if you remember it, you can actually copy this number, write it down in your little notebook, and then if you ever want to get it to fracture exactly the same, you can repeat with this random seed by replacing it.
That's
Anyway,
handy.
normally it auto increments, so you don't have to worry about a thing. You just fracture. If it's not the one you want, you undo, you fracture, blah, blah, blah. All right, so we're not going to worry about any of that. We're just going to hit fracture. So that's the only button that I've changed, right? I've changed the number of sites and I've hit fracture. That's it. I go in here and I look for this explode view radius. This is just a visualization tool that lets you see how many fractures you've created. So there's our cube into a bunch of blocks, and that's basically it. In order to make this really kind of cooler looking, let's now grab those, and I'm going to do another fracture on it. Okay, so I've grabbed the pieces, and I'm going to make sure that default light's not selected, or we'll get a little warning. And now we can just fracture it again. Each time you do that, it becomes a, what's the proper term there, Brian?
Well, you get another level of fracturing the hierarchy. There's, it's a hierarchy, so you have depths of chunks. So you would.
That's
Yeah,
right, chunk depth. So we'll get a new
Yeah.
chunk depth. So I'm going to hit fracture selected and add a chunk depth. Okay. So now if you look here in our stage, our original asset is this cube. We haven't touched it at all. We made a copy that became C0, right? Then each one of those become the children, and we now have each set lower in the hierarchy, right? So I can now fracture again, and you'll see we'll get another layer deep, and that's kind of what we were talking about with that blast depth, or the fracture depth. What is it? I just forget the name.
chunk depth.
Chunk depth.
Chunk.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Now this one's taking a moment to actually fracture because we're really going to be making a lot of parts now. So let's just let this finish.
I should point out the slowdown here isn't physics or blast really. It's our interaction with USD, and that's something that we have on on the horizon to optimize, use it smartly.
Wow.
So here we have a whole bunch of chunks.
That's
And of
insane.
course we can increase our blast radius, and it's a little sluggish, but it ain't so bad. So
Speed up
even
if
this
you
could be
deselect
turned
them.
into, yeah, it does. I mean, once it's moved, it's super good. Yeah. And then I don't know, let's do something fun with this. Let's get rid of this default light and create a light. Sphere light, yeah, that looks cool. All right, let's go into our render settings and let's jump into path traced. Actually, let's set our render mode to path traced. I'm just kind of giving us something kind of cool looking just to start with here. And I'm going to turn on path traced fog, and we should already start to see some of those rays. But yeah, we can change our colors. I don't know, I'm just kind of making it look cool. Increase our light. Yikes. All the way
Where's
to the
that
top.
light?
There we go. Oh, I have it selected already. I'm such a dope.
That looks
No,
cool.
we're getting those nice fog rays. Easy stuff, easy stuff. But yeah, I mean, just a cube fractured up a bunch can start to look really kind of neat, like just something this simple. So there's your first use case for Blast, right? Make something cool and add some lighting to it, blow it up, But this is not that useful. It's just a cube that we fractured. So before we move on, we're going to go into actually breaking something that kind of looks real next. But any questions from the audience at this point?
No, I
Any
think
questions for Brian? Or
everybody's pretty impressed right now. Yeah, so keep going.
I,
yeah,
I
we're
do.
good. No?
I do have a question. So, how many times can an object be fractured before Omniverse? How?
Just freaks out.
Yeah.
So
Well,
that's
that
a
number seems
sliding
pretty
scale.
Hardware.
So that's going to be a sliding scale answer. If you have
Yeah.
a whole ton of computing power and a high-end computer, you're going to get a lot. If you have a really good, top-end graphics card, you're going to get a lot. If you have, one old, barely hanging in there video card with yeah, you're going to get less. So the answer is it depends on your performance of your system, how much all of that is going to play into it.
Right.
My current system is a 10-year-old system with a very good 20 series card. So everything you're seeing happen today is on a pretty achievable. The only thing that I'll have is a lot more video memory because it's one of those Quadro cards. So it's got more video memory, but I mean, I don't think we're killing the video memory yet. So it's going to be, it depends is the answer. But even on this machine, which like I said, it's a 10-year-old box with 6 cores running at 4 gigahertz, I think. And I've got the RTX 8000, which is a
Nice.
great card. I'm not going to say it's
Yeah.
not a great card, but it is last generation. So it's just a hopped up 20 series card. So, if you have a 30 series, you're going to be able to do better than this even, so there you go.
And one thing about the
Really long answer for a very short
Yeah.
answer.
One thing about the hierarchical fracture, though, is that you can have this level of detail ready to go, but not show it all at once. So you could fracture, say, an object, a pillar, a building, a box, whatever. And then, if you start chipping away at it, you'll get all this detail out of it. But since it's been done hierarchically, the places that can be represented by much larger pieces and fewer of them are. And so that is one way you can try to not use as many resources, but still have kind of a fine level of detail. So
Yeah,
there's
so
always
we'll
ways to
offering.
work around whatever your limitations are.
Nice.
Someone's asking, how do you actually see the fracture? They see the geometry mesh, but not the seams or anything. It still looks whole.
Oh, all I would have
The
to.
seam.
Well, that's
Explode
because
views.
the original asset is whole. We haven't touched it at all. We've created a whole bunch of parts I'm sorry, I'm going in the wrong area. So all these are the parts that have been generated from that. So if I select this guy, it exists somewhere. Actually, that
So
wouldn't be true because it's got children. So I could grab one of these guys and it should be able to.
I saw
There
if
it
you,
is. So there's
Paul,
that asset.
I'll try
Found
setting the
So-
explode view back down to 1, and you can really see the cracks between it and how all the pieces fit together.
Sure. So, yeah, that's kind of what this explode view is useful for, where you can really, when you're
Just
actually
type
breaking
in there,
something,
too.
you use this just to kind of get your bearings, if you will. Oh yeah, you want me to just type one?
And the explode view radius only applies to the instance that you have selected.
So unfortunately, the light's now on it. So let me get that light out of the way.
All right.
Okay, there we go. Sorry, she's old. She likes to complain.
She's working. She's
Can you put up the technical
trying.
difficulties sign and the
yeah.
harden our dust? There we go.
Okay,
Yeah.
so there you go.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
You got it for a moment. We could much easier show this to you if it was less
Fewer
density
things,
right
yeah.
now. But we were kind of going for like that nice visual. So, but yeah. So yes, the answer is you can see it close. I'll now do it. So, well, you know what? How about I'll show you that
Move
in
the
the
light
next
out.
part because it'll make a
Yeah.
lot more
Oh,
sense.
right.
anyway.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, let's get to a nicer looking scene.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's just.
Not
get
that
this
didn't
out of
look
the way
great.
so you can see. So here you have your nice box again, and I believe if we were to do this to 1, we got to aim to please, right? I mean, we got to answer the question. Okay, so now it's all selected, and my explode view radius is 1, so we're actually slightly separated here, and you can actually see those cracks. So does that show you what you were looking for?
I mean, yeah, it shows the seams so you can see right where it's breaking.
Yeah, good.
Someone's
So I'm going to
asking
assume that we have a.
on USD. What happened to the
Yeah.
USD hierarchy?
Right.
Create new chunks.
What happened to it?
Right. So
We followed-
all of those chunks are being put into the hierarchy. They're bringing up a good point here in that it is expensive as a USD operation. This is meant to be the authoring time, and at runtime those chunks are already made. So we're not we're not trying to change the scene composition there. But it's a fair point, and yeah, that's one aspect of working with USD more intelligently that I mentioned earlier. Try to speed these operations up.
All right.
I go ahead and
So I'm
load
gonna
the next
move
scene,
now.
Paul.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and do that. So we have this nice little environment so that we can kind of see some things a little bit more realistically now. So that was a good intro of like, that's how easy it is. You hit the button, you hit fracture, you're off to the races. There you go. That'll work on any mesh, anywhere. So now let's try to author a little more intelligently. Okay. So what this scene is, let me just back up and give you this scene. So all this is some stuff I pulled out of the Marbles assets, kind of made like this little scene, gave the things that I wanted to have physics. So like these cans are physicsed, there's a word. They have physics on them. And to get that physics on them, all I do is select them, right click, add, physics, and then rigid body with collider. So if I wanted this paint can to be, physical, that's all I would do. And I did that to a couple assets already so that, and you'll see that this like pair of pliers is kind of floating in the air, right? So the reason I did that was just so that we had some stuff for our blast interactions to kind of work with. So you can kind of see. And if I hit play, we'll find that all the stuff falls to the ground just like we wanted, right? So there we got it. So that's the background of this scene. Now, all I'm going to do is show you how to work with some content. So let me scroll up to the top here.
And just
I'm
to
going to go.
confirm for everybody, so these Marble assets come with Omniverse. So when you install Omniverse, you'll have all this stuff.
Yeah, it's all part of the NVIDIA.
Yeah.
NVIDIA mount. So, okay, great. So now I'm just going to drag in something. I've got this glass jar that just looks really cool and it's fun to break. So I'm going to drag it all in and place it on my scene. And I'm just going to zoom in and get a good close look. So this gets more into like the art of authoring. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to set this down to a nice low number, like 3. Okay. I find that's a nice place to start.
Really quick thing. So a couple people are having a hard time reading the text. So when you're selecting a menu option, just maybe say it out loud so people can follow along.
Or, yeah, I'm sorry. Unfortunately, it's a little small text. So yeah. So I'm just going to hit the fracture selected button. I've set my Voronoi sights to 3. And now I'm going to hit fracture selected. And just like before, I'm going to open up my explode view radius. Okay. So now I've got kind of a closer view of what I'm looking for. And I'm just going to grab this whole glass jar and just lift it up a little bit so that I'm not, like, as I explode that out and we get more fractures, they're not going through the floor. Okay. So now I've got this nice view. All right. So a glass jar is most likely going to shatter the most at the bottom and less at the top, right? Especially if we drop it on the bottom. So I'm just going to start fracturing this one more. So
I'm
fracture
going to show them how you
selector.
can roll different fractures on the top level first.
Sure. So if that fracture wasn't good, I could just hit undo, select it again, hit fracture selected, and now it's going to be a different one. If I hit undo, select it again. Actually, it's not actually incrementing, is it? Or is it? 89,
Should be.
fracture selected.
That's
I
changing.
think it is actually. Yeah, it's changing. So not the one I want. Undo, select what I want, fracture selected. Yep, there we go. Okay, so let's say that's the one that I want. Now I'm just going to keep going and fracturing further. So this one I think I want to have like pulverized to bits. So I'm going to go fracture selected, fracture selected, fracture selected. And I've got a lot of nice little chunks in there. And this one I'm going to do something similar to. So fracture selected. Only this time I'm only going to grab that bottom bit. Fracture selected, fracture selected. Grab this one, rotate around a little bit, fracture once. Grab this lower bit, fracture selected, fracture selected. That's probably good enough. And I saw that this one reaches all the way to the bottom, but that's a really nice piece. I think I'll fracture it. I'm going to set this one to 2 fractures this time, or 2 Voronoi sights. Fracture it. Oh, good. I got what I wanted. Now I'm going to do this one again. Fracture selected. Oh, I got what I wanted. And now I'll set this to 3 and fracture selected, fracture selected. Okay, so now I hope you kind of went along with the way that I was thinking when I was fracturing that. But yeah, what I basically have is just all small bits on the bottom, nice larger bits on the top. And that's what I was talking about, like in your care to author. Every object is going to want to break in a way that the object wants to break, and you as the artist can kind of look at that, make the choices that you need to make the right choices, right? So that's what I did. So I'm just going to scroll and select the top of my hierarchy here, which is this blast base. And just actually, yeah, I'm sorry, the blast inst. Sorry, I'm scrolling around a bit. Didn't mean to do that to you. I just want to grab the inst. There we go. And now I'm just going to set my explode view radius back to 0, lift it up in the air, and I bet we forgot to do physics. Let's hit play, and we forgot to do physics. That is really frustrating, because that was the first thing that I wanted to mention about this glass jar, but I forgot. So,
well, now you can see why. And this is something
Yeah.
we're fixing. We're going to add the ability to retroactively put physics in.
Yeah.
Just in general, there's a
unfortunately,
push to make everything physical.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
yeah. So unfortunately, we don't have that right now. So what I'm going to do is be really embarrassed first, and then I'm going to hit reset data, wipe out everything that I just did. Now I'm going to add the physics to it. Right click, add, physics, rigid body with colliders. That's all I needed to do, but I forgot. So back to the drawing board, select my object, fracture selected, and I'm going to blow up my blast radius a little bit. I am really sorry about that, guys, but
That's
I'm going to
all
get there. Fracture
No, it's-
selected.
I-
Luckily, you get to see.
It's actually a good point to bring up in terms of what's in the future for Blast and how often are updates kind of coming lately. So that was one of them. So you said you'll be able to retroactively add physics. That's on the
Yeah.
roadmap?
Yeah, that's something we plan to do. We try to get updates out. We don't have a regular release schedule, but every every month or two, we usually have a nice update we can get out with some new features. Yeah, that's definitely one that we've seen would be really nice to have. Another thing is I should point out here is that Paul is trying random seeds, and when he gets something that he likes, he goes, "Oh, I like that," but you can imagine it would be nice to direct that a little more and not just roll the dice and see what you get. And so some work that Eric is doing right now is actually probably going to be allowing us to um, author where the pieces are in this Voronoi breakdown that you see there.
Yeah,
At
it's
least
going to
have
be
more
driven
control
off
over
of
that.
a point cloud, so you can specify the exact locations that you want the fracture to
Right.
happen.
So right, it does. It
Pretty
uses
good.
Voronoi. We use Voronoi fracturing right now. That is based off of a point cloud, and we do plan on adding other forms of fracturing as well.
So I just redid everything that I told you guys to do, and now I've got my jar all broken up, and it's back where we were. And I'm just gonna hit play, and it still doesn't drop. Right now I'm confused. Now I'm confused. Okay, let's try that one last time. You guys keep talking. I swear this is
Yeah,
easy.
yeah.
You mentioned
No, it
other
was
types of
confusing.
fracturing. So what other types of
I
fracturing?
bet I know what happened. I probably put the rigid body on the wrong thing.
Ooh, that would do it. Well, so just a quick breakdown here is that underlying the extension we have here is the Blast SDK, which is a low-level fracturing, authoring, and runtime toolkit. And the authoring portion comes with a number of different sort of modes of fracture, and there's basically slice fracturing, where you can just slice and dice along X, Y, and Z axes with noise. You can add noise to the fracturing surface planes. You can specify just a single cutting plane and say I want to fracture there. You can also have a shape that you put in there and say I want to use this as a cutout. Just you could take any kind of object and have it subtract that shape from another object, and that would be one of the pieces. And there's also something specifically called cutout fracturing, where you draw using a bitmap what the fracture lines are for. It's sort of meant to be a cookie cutter, where you could say have a wall outline and then have the bricks come out as bricks, say.
Wow, there's a lot of options there.
Yeah. It's pretty full featured, and we're right now we're just oh, look at that. Now that looks good.
Beautiful.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can hear the crash in my head.
Right now we're just really trying to work on the
Can I ask that
AI
actually?
UI here. Sorry.
About audio, how does your team interface with audio and physics and that kind of thing? Is that something that is also being worked on?
We don't have any current work in that direction, but it's something that's been discussed, and we want to.
Audio specifically has been brought up
Yeah.
as like they want audio to automatically play when
Yeah.
objects interact, and like we're not customizing really anything special with physics. We're sitting on top of the standard physics behavior. So if two objects colliding makes a noise, then our stuff would make a noise. One of the areas that we are looking to integrate with very soon is the flow particle system. So we want to have material-based effects where, when the glass breaks apart, or when wood breaks apart, or when clay breaks apart, you would expect to see different amounts and types of particles coming out of there as the pieces come apart, as they interact with each other, all that. So we want to make that very automatic based on the material. So we're starting to work with the developer who's doing the flow system itself to integrate the two together. If we can get somebody to do audio, then we can do the same thing there and integrate with them as well.
So flow would be a separate extension, or something that gets added to Blast?
No, flow is a standalone thing. You can just make particle simulations with it. But we would, if you have both of them on, we would automatically extend the functionality and fill in a lot of the detail for you.
Awesome.
The goal is to
We're trying to
make
work
it as
with the
easy
other
as
extensions.
possible.
Yeah.
Right. I'm sorry, I saw a question in the chat about external sources. We actually did build a USD schema, which is the way to describe the layout of data, basically. So if you want to work in your own external project or external program to create a fracture or to create, the meshes exactly how you want them, you can apply our schema to it and then import that into Omniverse directly and start using the simulation. You don't necessarily have to use Omniverse to author it. We're just doing it as, here's a way to get started, or if you don't have something else you want to use, you can do this to break it up. But yes, we are thinking about outside programs and allowing you to customize it how you want. And then if you just want to bring it in and simulate it within Omniverse, you can totally do that.
Very cool.
So I just had a little fun and broke up a couple more objects. Anybody was watching. And now we've got 3 mugs. Well, 2 glass jars and a mug. Let's just kind of get them nicely situated here.
Sorry, while you're doing that, there's another question about using AI and ML stuff to create, generate destructions. That's more on our wish list roadmap of farther out. We have things like adding stress solvers. So if you get up to building scale and you knock out a big section of it, the rest of it should crack and fall apart. The Blast SDK itself has that functionality. We just haven't hooked into it yet. So there's some existing features that we just need to expose to Omniverse. There's plenty of stuff that Brian and I just internally want to do. It's just a matter of time to be able to work on it.
I don't think I ever actually fashioned this guy, did I? So isn't this where we can adjust the contact threshold? Isn't that right?
Yeah, you can adjust contact
so that's
threshold.
One of the fiddly bits in the UI. The contact threshold is setting a limit on when damage is reported from the physics system. Like I said, we just hook into generic physics functionality so we can get a callback when 2 objects interact, but we don't want just like a cup settling on the table to cause damage, because then the cup just kind of disintegrates and it looks weird. So this contact threshold allows us to control, the impact has to be greater than a certain amount to actually cause damage. So there you go. And that is a per object setting. So like the little coffee cups you can set differently than if you had like the whole wall section or a large building. Set those all
might be a good chance to show off
craft it.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say this might be a good chance to show how you can make multiple instances from one destructible. So you could take the glass and or one of the jars and just duplicate it and
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what this instance he's talking about here is.
That's right.
This is the instance. So because it's an instance and we have a base, so up here, if I keep scrolling up, here's our base, right? So you have a base and an instance. So the base is the instructions, the instance is the copy. So we can just go duplicate and move it over here.
So this is leveraging USD to have the base is like the actual mesh data, that's the heavyweight data, and the instance is just inheriting from that and only what it needs. So like right now, it's a single chunk. And as you can see, new prims are created as pieces fall apart, but it's always just pointing back to the base. So those extra copies of the jar are very lightweight in terms of memory.
Right, and they behave separately and can be given separate properties such as how damage spreads throughout them and so forth. So you could make one jar really strong, or etc.
Yep. So that leads us to our next. That kind of segues us into our next bit, which is authoring blast assets externally, right? So, and I don't mean externally to Omniverse. I mean externally to this file. So what I've got here is some chalk from the what was it, the marbles assets. And what I've done is I've just gone in and, as you saw me do with all these guys, I just created these in separate files. So if I were to open one of these up, I'll just go ahead and do so. Don't save. Okay, we're going to have a piece of chalk that's been broken up already, right? And as you can see, it's exactly the same thing. And I did that with all these chalks. So now if I go into my Enviro, load that back up, right? I can take these pastels and drag them into my scene.
While you're getting those, I'm going to try to jump on some more questions. There was something about Houdini. Yeah, the idea is that, like in Houdini or something, that you'd be able to author in there and bring it in. That would require somebody either on the Houdini side or our side to write it. We don't have the actual connector part built for that, but the idea is that they would build it to the specifications of the schema, and then it would just work.
I can answer this one this comment someone made about the debug visualization explode view. I agree with that comment from Authentic ITYVR. It's yes. The first thing you probably want to do is visualize it, and going hunting for a random control is probably not the best UI. It's true. Having a nice slider near the top, I think, would be.
This UI has been built by two programmers with very little eye towards user experience so far.
Yeah,
that's right. It says, is the object fractured while falling, or is it only when it collides it breaks apart? It's when it collides, we do damage to it, so it's localized to where the collision happens. All these objects are fairly small, it's kind of hard to see, but it is doing damage to a specific part. If it was like a long, thin object and you hit it on one end, only that end would break.
Right. And how far it breaks through the object is something you can tune. It's and that automatic impact damage is well, it's automatic. We tie into the physics event system to trigger damage events, but that's not the only way damage can happen. We have a C++ API to the extension that allows you to apply damage to various objects, create damage events, and there's a Python wrapper binding for all the C++ functions, so you can script all this stuff. So and we use that API to apply the impact damage. So we're dog fooding. We know that the API works because everything you see is using it.
Right. So you can click on objects in the scene and kind of simulate little mini explosions and blast them apart.
Right. That's another form of damage we offer.
Simulate a weapon or anything else. Yeah, you could write scripts, your own stuff to make it happen, not just physical interaction.
And so just to cut back in, I had a little technical trouble there, but we're back. And I've brought in all those assets, as I was saying, that have been pre-authored with Blast, and I just hit play.
CCD.
Yep, I got to turn on the CCD. But there they are breaking into the pieces. So let me stop that. So what we were all talking about is CCD. So that's something that you kind of want to watch in your assets. Under your Blast instance, you're going to have this A0. And if you look in the properties, there's this option to say enable CCD. Oh, it seems to be enabled. Maybe the box doesn't have CCD enabled. That's my guess, anyway. Although that's not a rigid body. Well, let's just disable our box for the moment, because I think that's our issue here. And we'll just hit play. No, they're just not.
Oh, there they go.
There.
Wonder if it's my performance is struggling or something. But there you go.
That's kind of cool. It looks like it turns to powder when it breaks apart.
Yeah. I have a feeling the scene didn't load properly or something, because it's acting a little goofy. Let me try reloading it.
Another question about demo scenes of Blast. There are, if you go into the physics demo scenes, there's a tab for Blast stuff where we've set up to showcase how to do some of these things very specific. parts that then you can combine into more complex scenes. Paul's also done some videos for us and the documentation pages that you can watch to see how to do all this, where it should be a little easier to see. It's not compressed over a stream.
Yeah, the YouTube channel and NVIDIA On Demand for Omniverse both have lots of great content from Paul and the team. And then obviously anyone can hop over to our Discord. I see a couple of Discord users in our chat room right now. Hey, Carlos. So Discord is a great place for the users to hang out, share each other's progress on stuff, ask questions. And of course, Wendy herself manages the forums, and that's a great place to also engage with developers on the team here, as well as report any bugs or make your feature requests.
Cool.
Well, can you try doing the click on them, do some extra damage, maybe put them closer to the ground so they don't completely shatter, to show them how that works?
Sorry, what do you want?
Mouse damage.
Mouse
the mouse
damage.
damage,
Yeah.
Sure.
So you can just
So
blow things around. So if you set them close to the ground so they don't shatter into all the pieces.
then if you hold Shift B,
Mm-hmm.
you blast them apart. That was just probably too much
Wow.
force.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've
Your
got
settings
crazy
are
force
a little
going.
high there.
Yeah, there's an adjustment for that.
Might be the best example.
Well, they're very small objects, so I kind of expected that would happen. Oop, I'm grabbing the wrong bits.
Yeah, and that's one of the settings in the panel that you can adjust, is how much damage is doing, how big the radius is.
And then we also not only do the damage, but we apply a radial force to everything. Just to, simulate an explosion. So you can take that damage impulse and...
Pretty low. One.
Yeah, but that chalk is pretty light.
Yeah.
Chalk's tiny.
So try clicking nearby those pieces. There you go.
There you go.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, so you can kind of push things around. It's doing damage to
Right.
them, breaks them up farther.
right.
Anyway,
That's awesome.
it's useful to do, especially as you're kind of crafting it and determining if it's behaving the way you want. It's a nice way to you can click on it and break pieces off and see if it looks and feels the way you want. And then stop sim, go back, reset stuff. One thing he didn't show with the reset blast data, you can take just a part of hierarchy and say reset data only on that part. Like if you decided I don't want that glass jar to be fractured down into a fine powder, you can click on a whole collection of pieces and say reset just on that piece, so you don't lose all of your data. You can just re-sculpt one area of it. It's really useful.
So
Yeah.
Very cool.
that's
You've made a mess, Paul.
that's
Yeah.
that. I have made a mess. Okay, so I'm just going to reload this environment, and I'm going to show you the last thing that kind of shows you a more complex assembly. So what we've done so far is broken up individual meshes, right? But what happens if we have a mesh that has a bunch of components, right? Like, let's say a record player, because that's what we're going to shatter. Now, first of all, we're going to have different break levels within it, right? Like the base of the record player may want to break less than the other parts. So whereas the record might shatter into a million little itty bitty pieces, right? So we want to be able to author that, but we want it to work as a whole unit, generally speaking, right? So this next workflow is how you're going to do that. So I'm just going to reload the scene just to clear everything out. Enviro, don't save anything. And now I've got my scene empty again. Okay. And I've built this asset ahead of schedule so that we could take a look at it before I do it for you. So you can see why I'm making the decisions I'm making. So I'm going to go to this record player, got record player blast. And I'm just going to drag it in. This is the pre-made one that I was talking about. Oops. All right, let's just get that kind of situated somewhere, like right there. That should be good, maybe up a little higher. And now, okay, so let's think about how we would want this to break, right? Like this plinth, let's see if I can select individual components there. So this plinth is probably going to break like maybe one or two big heavy cracks, right? The tone arm might break into a couple parts. The record might shatter, but this metal base is not going to shatter, right? We're going to want that to stay pretty much as a whole unit. And all these things sitting on top, like the buttons, they would be great if they just popped off and just flew, right? So how would we go about doing that? What would that look like if we did it? So this is what it'll look like if you do it, right? Nice believable fracture, right? I think that looks pretty cool, right? I'll stop and rewind and play it again so you can see it again, but try to get a better view for you. There you go. So I hit play, it falls, it breaks, we got buttons popping off, and some minor breaks, but like for the most part, we still have a lot of intact pieces, right? And again, we treated it all as a whole when we hit the play button, right? So even if I were to drag this way up high, oops, not that, that. If we grab this and drop it way up high, we'll notice that the record's not separating, nothing's separating. It's all just staying as one unit until it makes contact. So that's how we want it to act, right? So, like I was saying, it's a complex assembly made of a lot of components. We want to bind them together first and then fracture the components that we want to fracture. That's exactly how we do it. So let's now build our own. So I'm going to delete this record player and I'm going to drag in this record player.usd, which is the exact same record player, just no blast data on it, just a fresh copy of the record player. Now we're just going to walk through the process of what it'll be like to author this. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is open up our record player and take a look at our pieces. Okay, so here you can see we've got turntable, we've got the tone arm, we've got the record, and then the body is made of the guide rail and the guide post and the catch post and all these little bits and doodads, right? That all make up that stuff in there. But those are all separate meshes. Okay.
Do
So
they
all I'm
already
gonna
have
do,
physics, Paul?
yes, I believe they do. Let's just double check that
Let's
fact.
double check that.
But yes,
Great
they're
question.
rigid bodied. I'm pretty sure I had set that up already. So yes, they all have their components. They've all got physics set on them. Now all I'm going to do is select them all. I'm going to go to our blast panel, and this is where a new button is going to come into play. The new button is going to be
Right at the
combine
top.
selected. Right here
First
at the
thing you
top.
want to do. Yep.
Combine selected. So what that's going to do is that's going to join them all as one logical unit. Okay. And basically, this technically has already started the blast process. So if we were to
Go
go
ahead
in
and
here
hit
and
play.
we explode the view, you'll see that they're all separate components. And all we've done is just kind of made those the first fracture, if you will. Right?
That's
So
exactly
those
what you've
chunks
done.
now
Yeah.
act as the first fracture level. Right? So that's cool. And if we hit play, we'll find that all the things pop apart. Right? Pretty cool. So let's hit stop. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab my plinth and I'm going to go in here and I'm going to go fracture selected. And I'm going to need to have a little blast radius. So that kind of broke how I wanted it. I might do this one more time. Fracture selected. Yeah, that should be good. But it's not going to break like crazy. So let's do that. The record, that's going to shatter to like a million pieces. So let's go fracture selected. I'm going to undo that. What I want to get is a fracture that tries to avoid through the paper. So I'm going to go fracture selected. Ooh, that's a good one. Okay. So here it gets a little tricky that you can't quite see all your pieces. So what I do is I select one, and then here's my list. So I can just go through that list to find the one I want to fracture more. This one I'm going to set to like, I don't know, 32 total pieces. And say fracture selected. So I've got a lot of little chips and broken bits. Same thing with
Also use
actually this
the
one.
select parent and select child buttons to walk up and down the hierarchy. It's a nice way to find pieces.
Oh, that's a good idea. I'll show that in a second. So yeah, I can go up and down the hierarchy. So here, that one's the one I want to. I'll put this one to 16. Fracture selected. Yeah, that looks pretty cool. That one's good. This one I'm going to do down to 2 again. So I get my kind of desired fracture. Not the one I want. Not the one I want. Not the one I want.
Here's where a little control would help.
Yeah.
Kind of better. That's good. I'll live with that. When they all pop apart, you won't really notice them anyway. Fracture selected. Good to go. All right. And then this tone arm, I probably want it to break like once or twice, so I'm just going to set this to 2. Actually, I'll set it to 1 and get lucky fractures each time. Did I get a lucky fracture? I don't know until I increase my blast radius. Oh, wait, did I lose it? I have a feeling it chipped off a very little piece. Let's do that one over again. Fracture. Selected. Oops, it doesn't like me now.
You have one.
Did
one
you set
chunk?
it to 1?
Yeah, one
That
shouldn't.
doesn't make
one
sense.
is not valid.
Oh, okay.
Minimum should be 2. You
Yeah.
can type anything in, but it needs to break it into at least 2 pieces.
Right.
There we go. Fairly lucky break. I like lucky breaks. Let's do this one in 2. Perfect. So that's kind of how I'd expect it to kind of snap. And that's it. That's authoring a complex object. So I'm just going to now tell this blast radius to go to 0. And I'm going to grab the whole, combined blast instance. Set that to 0.
You don't have to manually set it to 0. If you start simulation, it'll set it to 0 for you.
Yeah, I know. It just looks so pretty when it. Yeah. Although it did look like it all started to come apart. Did you notice that?
Yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah.
What was strange was that the tone arm you were able to set to 0 separately.
I think it's breaking
from
on
the rest of
something there.
Hmm.
Oh, did I maybe not grab the tone arm? Was the tone arm not part of the equation originally?
I think that.
Yeah, look at that.
Yeah, you've got 2 different ones, but those can be combined.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you don't have to combine first. You can fracture objects and then combine multiple fracture objects or a fractured object with just a regular mesh. You can take kind of any combination of things and glue them together.
Hey, look at
Oh,
that.
that's cool.
There you go.
Yeah, you did that on purpose, right? To show off how easy it is to fix your
To
mistakes.
recombine? Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. That's part of the lesson plan.
Easy to
Nice.
use. Complex features.
That's how easy it is, guys. I think that's pretty easy.
What record?
Any questions before we move on to our next and final bit?
I did want to bring up, Brian answered it in the chat, but functionality of Blast in Machinima, because I know there's a lot of community users that like to blow things up when they're making their videos.
Yeah. It's an extension. It should work in any Omniverse kit-based app, which Machinima is, so there should be no problems. Just load up the extension.
So this does bring up a good point. Right now, Machinima really is kind of our target use case. As Brian said, our performance is not where we want it, largely because of sitting on top of USD and just general. Trying to use USD as a runtime data structure is really the first large application that's doing it, and there's lots of things we need to learn about it and ways to optimize it. So our primary focus is not currently real-time performance. That is something that we want to get to. But doing something like Machinima, where you render out a movie, totally do it. The performance is good enough that you can do authoring, you can do preview of it in the scene, and then when you do your final render, you'll get whatever frame rate you want. So right now we're targeting the pre-rendered scenes into that use case, but we are going to keep pushing on performance until we get the real-time simulation up to speed.
Awesome. And another quick question: what happens to the UV on textures?
Yeah, I was just answering that one.
Okay.
Yeah, so the external triangles, we split the UVs so that everything would look as you would expect on the external side. On the internal side, we arbitrarily apply a UV mapping to the internal faces that you can scale with the object how you like, but you have really no direct control over the orientation or translation of that UV map. So the intention is that you're going to use some sort of material, some texture that is kind of homogeneous looking, inside of concrete or something like that, so that it doesn't really matter how it's applied to the internal face.
Right. But that is one of the other controls in the panel. You can pick a material and do it when you fracture. You can also, if you forgot to do it or you decide I don't like the external material being applied to the inside, you can click on any portion of the hierarchy and set the material, and it'll go ahead and apply that to all of the children for you.
Very cool.
While the panel doesn't look super great and there are some bits that are kind of confusing, we are trying to make it easy to author and easy to go back and correct things later if you forgot to do something or you changed your mind. That's why we want to make the ability to apply physics later, because we've found it's easy to forget to do that, and it would be nice if you could, have a button that does it instead of unwind all of your work, apply physics, and then redo it all.
So Paul, you've got a pretty cool looking scene loaded up here.
Whose house is that?
Yeah, so it's mine. It's mine.
It's very fragile.
It's fine. I'll rent it to you gladly. No problem.
Something tells
So,
me.
so yeah, this is a pretty heavy scene, and this is kind of like the end result of what we want Blast to be able to do. Well, not the end result, but hopefully we'll even do better. But this is kind of the coup de grace of what you can do with Blast currently. It shows a complete scene with multiple fracture areas, multiple combined instances where sleeping some assets so that they don't become active until the very end, or until they're actually blasted, if you will. There's a lot of little tricks going on in here, but totally doable. And you can do a full-size scene like this, complete with patio furniture that we're going to smash into little bits, so all these things are going to break. I've got depth of field on my camera, as you can tell. Just kind of go back to where I was. We've got glass panes down here that we want to be able to shatter, this wall that we can shatter. These are just static assets that sit there. And then we even have some cameras that sweep, so if I can scrub this a little bit. My performance on this scene is awful. But so we have a nice camera scene that sweeps in. We then have a script that launches a projectile from up in these trees, hits this kind of chimney, smashes through the chimney, continues its trajectory, smashes through the floor, breaks the table up, and we blow the whole house to bits. So I don't know how much more you would want to do with an extension like Blast, but I think we pulled every stop that was possible. So just to give you a kind of idea of what we can do. Just so in case anyone's asking, the way that we did the cameras was with Keyframer. This, you can just select a camera, gives you a timeline. You can create your camera timelines. So very easy. And the way that we did the final output of the rendering was we went movie capture. And yes, Blast will work great with movie capture. So here's our movie capture. You're just going to select your camera, select your frames per second, select your render mode. We did all of ours in path traced with about 64 samples. I'm sorry, I'll set it to 64. So the one you want to watch here is this path trace samples per pixel. That was what I set to 64. It's about the only thing you have to edit, unless you don't want motion blur. And some of them I found motion blur was not useful, especially if you plan to slow down the effect later. Do not turn on the motion blur, because you'll get very blurry subframes, which doesn't look so hot when you start slowing down time. So just something to be aware of. I would actually turn this off. It also increases your render performance a little bit, because you don't have to render all those subframes. And that's basically it. Then you just hit capture. I did mine as an MP4. And the end result, I'll let Wendy take the show, because I think she has the video loaded up, and you guys can take a look at what we were able to do. And mind you, this was not for like anything real, like of course we could have put more time in, put special effects on top, done additional things to make it even hotter. But it's, in my opinion, it's showing the ability to hit movie level quality pretty much, in one tool. It's pretty awesome. So Wendy, do you want to show the vid?
I see it.
Just playing.
Yep.
So this is a great example of how we want to add flow and particles and dust and like really tiny bits of debris automatically using the flow simulation. Like it already looks cool, but having clouds of dust come out and the flow simulation does interact with rigid bodies. So since we're breaking off actual rigid bodies, they would create trails through the smoke. It would look very, very believable. So we want to make that like just dead simple for users to set up. Like you have both the extensions loaded and it does it for you based on materials.
Yeah, we've actually done it. We've done it with smoke and fog and all that. We had like a comet hit the building once, and it's doable. It's just right now I wouldn't.
It's all manual
because it's not. Yeah, it's all manual labor. So you'd have to go in there and manually add it to all your little assets to make it work. But it is, in theory, to someone who knows how to script, you could get that to script out pretty easily. But I think we plan to add it down the road.
Yeah, the integration is something we have on the horizon.
That is on the short timeline of our roadmap.
So if anyone has any questions, now would be the time to ask it. I think we're open to Q&A now, right? Just straight Q&A?
Yeah. Someone asked about a marketplace for extensions. How people can, find out what new extensions are available. Is that something we're going to have in the future?
So I know we are working on getting an extension marketplace, and I don't know if we're going to be talking about it at our next stream. Edmar, you're muted, Edmar.
Sorry, I think we are. I was actually behind the scenes trying to find out exactly what the timetable is. But I think that when you have Omniverse loaded, you'll see in the launcher there's a tab at the top for Exchange, and that's where all the content from community and other companies and NVIDIA, that's where you can grab everything. So we're definitely exploring things in that direction because we feel like the Omniverse platform represents an amazing opportunity for that kind of community and exchange of content. So stay tuned. Definitely watch next week's stream, which is going to be focused on creating that kind of content using Omniverse Kit, so making extensions, in other words. And then at GTC, which I posted in the chat but didn't say out loud earlier, but we have a GTC coming up from November 8th to 11th. So if you go to nvidia.com/GTC, it'll always bring you to our next GTC. We will definitely be talking more about all this stuff. So you should definitely go register. It's free for everybody. And that's the best place to get the latest and greatest information about what we're got going on right now and then what's on our roadmap. So stay tuned, but you can probably expect to see some more news on that pretty soon. Hint, hint.
Yeah.
Good plug.
So I'm gonna do a screen of our available resources. Guys, check all of these out. We have some really great tutorial videos. A lot of them Paul did for us that hopefully will get you started so that you can start destroying whatever you have modeled in your in your scene. And we also have a gallery page, so if you want to send us or go to our forum, post your stuff in the showcase, you can get your stuff actually put on our website on our gallery page. So I want to thank our guests. Thank you, Brian, Eric.
It's been a pleasure. I love showing this stuff off. I want to see people using it. Someone asked earlier about the real world usage for Blast and Omniverse, and I think Blast is pretty fresh. It's just hot off the presses, so we want to see real world usage, and that's one reason we're putting this out here.
So does our boss.
Someone's asking about the gallery supporting videos, and yes, we actually are showing some of the videos from the latest Marbles contest, Marvelous Machines, so you can check out some stuff. And just to also add to Wendy's point, we love seeing what the community is creating with Omniverse. So put it on our gallery, put it on our Discord. We have a showcase channel, like she mentioned, on the forums. But also, we'd love to see that stuff on social media so we can share it and promote it. So please, show us the great stuff you're making, or the great stuff you're exploding or breaking or making a mess up.
Everyone at NVIDIA, we share all of this stuff with the NVIDIA team. You guys are loved by the entire company, so please share us your stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely, as a developer, it's super exciting to see other people do something with our tech that we're building. So I would love to see things, and I would also like to replug Discord, specifically the physics channel. I've already answered a bunch of questions. Please come in there if you have questions on how to do things, you're having trouble, or whatever. Come in there and chat. I try to keep tabs on it a couple times a day at least. I'm happy to answer questions. Just tag me directly. I think I'm Clockwork Robot in there, or Eric. I forget which. But just tag me and I'll try to help you out.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. We're signing off for now. Let us know if you have any questions. Next stream is going to be awesome. It is one I absolutely recommend everyone watches. This is where you actually get to create your own extension or your own little mini application where you can actually do the things that you want Omniverse to do. So thank you, Brian. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Paul and Edmar.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thanks for watching, everyone.
Thank you, Wendy.
Now go break stuff.
Yeah.
Omniverse.
Hold up.
Omniverse.